Hello Star Citizens, Buzzkiller here, and welcome to another episode of Week in Review. Due to the popularity of the previous episode, I've decided to make this a semi-regular series. Basically, if CIG puts out enough content during the week, and I have enough time, I'll go ahead and release another one of these videos on the weekend. And during those episodes, what I'll end up doing is I'll comb through all the content released by CIG that week, and I'll come back to you guys with the highlights. So without further ado, let's start off this week's episode, episode 2, for the week of February 23rd, 2015. Kicking off our Monday, we had another episode at 10 for the chairman, and in it, Chris answered some pretty interesting questions. The first question was about password-coded hangar doors, and what the guy wanted to know is if he could lock people out of certain rooms in his hangar or his ship. And of course Chris said yes, that will be possible, and in fact they added a little thing about this in the episode of Around the Verse this week. Next up we had a question about sim pods on large ships. And Chris thought that was a really good idea, because basically it'll harken back to the old Wing Commander games where they had a arcade game basically in the lounge of any ship, allowing the pilots to hone their skills. Another interesting question was the realistic ballistics with gravity, and Chris has confirmed that all the bullets will be fully modeled in the game and they will be affected by gravity or the lack thereof. So that should be pretty interesting for the FPS module. And finally we had a question about limitations for guests on board ships. Basically the guy wanted to know if there's going to be a limit to how many people he could fit aboard, say, his Redeemer. And what Chris said was, to start off they probably won't have any limits, but if it starts causing issues then they will place limits on that number. And they'll probably, for the justification in the lore, they'll make it a function of the ship's environmental system, its life support. So basically the life support can only support so many people. On Tuesday we had another episode of Meet the CIG Devs, and in this video we actually had 3 people in the hot seat. And this week it was the entire Austin character team. So starting from right to left we have Billy Lord, Megan Cheever, and their lead, David Jennison, who actually stole the show with his evil rendition of Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. Also on Tuesday, we had our first episode of The Wonderful World of Star Citizen with our new host, Disco Lando. And basically what this is going to be is a new monthly segment where he takes all of the fan-created content and gives us the highlights, gives us the best of. This week he had, for example, Fiendish Feathers video, Pieces of 8, which was absolutely fantastic. He had a little bit about Bad News Baron and Torque17, our Twitch guys, and several other people were highlighted as well. Should be an interesting series, and I can't wait for the next episode. We kicked off our Wednesday with a little bit of lore, with this Spectrum dispatch entitled Congress Now. In this dispatch, a couple senators from the UEE Senate go at it over the current funding of the UEE military. So a pretty interesting read. Next up we had a fan spotlight. This was Music Volume 4. And of course in it had several tracks of music created by various Star Citizen fans and organizations. And finally on Wednesday we had a update to the subscribers vault. This update was the Orion Work in Progress gallery. In it there's a bunch of images from George Hull, who created the Orion, showing basically the evolution of the Orion until its final concept, which we are seeing now. What's also interesting is they allowed non-subscribers to see many of these images as well, and they were put out in a standard comlink format. Thursday we started off with our weekly episode of Around the Verse. This was episode 33, and in it there was a lot of great information. Starting off with news around the verse, we had of course Santa Monica, and they talked a little about the rec system. They also talked about the Hull series, which is apparently going to be a several ships instead of just one. It's going to be the hull A through the hull E. And along with that, they talked a little bit about another game mode for Arena Commander called the Cargo Olympics. Probably a working title, but should be pretty interesting for non-combat ships. They talked a little bit about the damage system and how it's being prototyped on the new Gladius. And speaking of the Gladius, they confirmed that the Gladius will be flight capable in 1.1, and the Retaliator will be hangar ready in 1.1 as well. So I'm really excited for 1.1. I own both of those ships. I can't wait to see the Retaliator. That's going to be an absolutely beautiful ship. Next up, we had Foundry 42 in the UK, and in it they talked more about the doors system. Again, this is the different security levels and ways of securing your doors from unwanted guests in both your hangar and your ship. They also talked about a lockdown function for whenever your cabin decompresses. And of course, when that happens, you have to have some way of opening the doors. And they talked about having manual override levers to allow you to do that. For the next studio, we had Ilphonic. And of course, they are really working hard on the PAX prep for the FPS demo. They talked a little bit about controller support for FPS. And then they spoke a little bit about the sniper rifle, which probably won't be available at PAX, but will be added to the FPS module somewhere down the line. Next up we had CIG Austin, and they were working with the FPS module as well, working on polishing the characters for that module. They also talked a little bit about some clothing sets that they're putting together for Terra. The next segment was of course Bug Smashers with our friend Mark Aben, and in this episode he talked about the Avenger door, the rear door, cargo door. And basically what they want to do is make that door close whenever you sit in the cockpit seat. I'm hoping they do the same thing for the 300 series. Next up we had a new segment that they might make kind of a regular segment for Around the Verse, and that was the ship balancing segment. In it, Matt Sherman talked a bit about the ballistic balancing that occurred in the 1.0.3 patch. Basically, he said that the Sledge Mass Driver has gained its own unique form of ammo. It previously shot 60mm. Now it shoots its own unique 60mm ammo called Rail Shot, basically allowing the round to travel at a faster velocity. They also made some improvements to this Tiger Streak on the Avenger. They upped it to a 25mm round, which will give it more damage overall. The sneak peek was a good one. It showed the Cutlass modularity. And let me go ahead and show you that. So there you go. Basically it was the same images Sandy released on her Facebook earlier this week with a few more added on top of it. So the Cutlass really looks like it's shaping up rather nicely. On Thursday they also unlocked the subscriber vault and gave non-subscribers access to the WIP Gladiator gallery, showing the development process of the Anvil Gladiator. Also, to wrap it up, we got the much-awaited Orion minigame. It was called Alone in the Verse. Pretty neat little game where you have to basically repay a loan of 600,000 UEC by mining asteroids and upgrading your ship, and along the way you run across a lot of different dangers. It's a pretty neat little game, and I look forward to actually completing this hopefully in the near future. And that brings us to Friday. We started off Friday with an update to the Orion mining platform. Basically what they've done is they've removed the cockpit from the side of the ship here and placed it centrally on the top. They also took the mining laser arm that was here and put it on the side here. Now they're not sure if this is going to be the final placement. They may put it back depending on what we say in the forums. So if you're very passionate about where you want your cockpit, I'd suggest getting on the forums and make them a post, or finding a post that's already in progress and putting your 2 cents worth in. CIG is great about taking our feedback. And finally, we have the big news of the week. The Cutlass Black is now available for all backers to try out in Arena Commander. They've also released the Blue, which is the limited variant of the Cutlass lineup, for sale in the Pledge Store. So you can pick up a Cutlass Blue package for $165 or a Cutlass Blue standalone ship for $150. And with that, they finally released the Mark III version of the Tarantula 870 ballistic cannon. Well, Star Citizens, that about wraps up this episode of Week in Review. I hope you found it informative. If you liked the video, go ahead and hit that like or subscribe button, and I'll do my best to continue bringing you guys updates on the best damn space sim ever made. Until next time, this has been Buzzkiller, and I will see you guys in the verse.